The history of the Peruvian community in Japan. The relationship between Peru and Japan is one of the oldest and most unique links between Asia and Latin America. Its roots go back to the 19th century, when both nations, so distant on the map, decided to look each other in the eye and shake hands. In 1873, they signed a treaty of friendship and commerce that marked the beginning of a human connection which, over time, would evolve into a shared story of migration, hard work, and dreams. Years later, in 1899, the first 790 Japanese immigrants arrived at the port of Callao. They came with few belongings, but a strong desire to prosper. They worked on sugarcane, cotton, and rice plantations, and although the language and climate felt foreign, they found in Peru a new land where they could take root. That first generation planted more than crops. They sowed a legacy of discipline, solidarity, and respect that still flourishes today, both in Lima and in Tokyo. The Nikkei heritage in Peru. Over the decades, the descendants of those early immigrants, known as Nikkei, became part of Peru's social fabric. They not only adopted the local language and customs, but also contributed their own sense of work, family, and community. Today, more than 200,000 Peruvians have Japanese ancestry, forming one of the largest Nikkei communities in the world. Their influence can be felt in science, industry, literature, and especially in gastronomy. Nikkei cuisine, that magical fusion between the flavors of the Peruvian sea and Japanese delicacy, has become a global symbol. Behind every dish lies a story of cultural encounter, adaptation, and mutual respect. But Nikkei heritage is not limited to the table. It also lives on through artists like Tilsit Tsuchiya and Jose Watanabe, in the festivals of the Peruvian Japanese Cultural Center, and in the thousands of families who, without forgetting their roots, have made Peru their home. That dual identity, both Latin and Eastern, would later become the seed of a new migratory wave, this time in the opposite direction. The reverse journey. From Peru to Japan. By the late 1980s, Peru was facing one of the harshest crises in its history. Hyperinflation, unemployment, and insecurity pushed many to seek a future abroad. Meanwhile, Japan was going through an economic boom and needed labor for its growing industries. In 1989, the Japanese government amended its immigration law, allowing the entry of descendants of Japanese nationals, the Nikkei, and their families. This opened a door of hope. Thousands of Peruvians of Japanese descent began migrating to Japan. What began with a few thousand people soon turned into a massive movement. Agencies organized groups of workers known as Dekasegi, who left their homes to work in automobile, electronics, and textile factories. For many, it was their first time setting foot on their grandparents' homeland. But Japan didn't always welcome them as countrymen. Cultural differences, language barriers, and customs reminded them that their identity no longer fully belonged to one single place. The Dekasegi phenomenon. During the 1990s, the Dekasegi phenomenon reshaped the human geography of industrial Japan. In just 2 years, the Peruvian population in the country tripled. Entire families arrived with temporary contracts, settling in prefectures such as Aichi, Kanagawa, and Gunma. Factories became their spaces of adaptation and shared housing their first homes. At first, many planned to stay only 3 or 4 years, save money, and return to Peru. But over time, the temporary dream became permanent. Children entered Japanese schools, parents learned the language, and new generations found their own place between two worlds. Despite long working hours and demanding conditions, the Peruvian community earned a reputation for being hardworking, supportive, and resilient. Their story is written in the sound of machines, in crowded morning trains, and in Sunday gatherings where aji de galina and onigiri share the same table. Current presence and distribution. Today, the Peruvian community is the largest Spanish-speaking population in Japan. According to recent data, more than 49,000 Peruvians officially reside in the country. Most live in industrial areas where job opportunities are concentrated, though more and more are settling in major cities like Tokyo, Osaka, or Yokohama. Over the years, the population has aged. Nearly one-third are now over 50, marking the beginning of a new chapter for a generation deeply rooted in Japan. Many have become permanent residents or naturalized citizens, building a human bridge that connects Peru and Japan in everyday life. Children who speak Spanish at home and Japanese at school. Families who celebrate both Obon and Independence Day with equal devotion. Work, effort, and stability. Work has always been the backbone of the Peruvian community in Japan. From automobile factories to restaurants and service companies, Peruvians have stood out for their dedication and adaptability. Over the years, many transitioned from temporary to permanent employment. Others opened small businesses, Latin grocery stores, or restaurants where the aromas of Peru blend with Japanese precision. Remittances sent to their families helped sustain entire communities in Peru, while also strengthening Japan's economy through their steady contribution. Today, more than two-thirds of them hold permanent residency, a symbol of integration achieved through patience and perseverance. What began as a journey of survival has turned into a story of belonging. Culture, identity, and celebration. Thousands of kilometers away from Lima, Peruvians in Japan keep their culture alive. Every July 28th, the streets of Tokyo, Hamamatsu, and Nagoya fill with Criolla music, marinera dances, and Andean rhythms. At local festivals, children parade in traditional costumes while adults prepare anticuchos, papa a la huancaina, and lomo saltado to share with Japanese visitors curious to taste new flavors. But it's not only about festivities. In temples, churches, and community centers, Peruvians gather to teach Spanish, preserve religious traditions, and strengthen the identity of their Japan-born children. This coexistence between Peruvian and Japanese cultures has given rise to a new cultural expression, the contemporary Nikkei, a mix of nostalgia and renewal where distance becomes a form of belonging. Integration and challenges. Life in Japan has not been easy. The rules, the pace, and the language pose constant challenges. Many of the first migrants learned Japanese by listening to coworkers or watching TV. Over time, new generations grew up bilingual, more adapted, and with a different outlook on the future. Yet challenges remain: access to better jobs, children's education, and balancing two cultural identities. During the 2008 financial crisis, when Japan offered incentives for foreigners to return to their home countries, many Peruvians chose to stay. They were no longer just temporary workers. They had become neighbors, parents, and active members of Japanese society. Solidarity and community networks. The strength of the Peruvian community lies in its ability to organize. Since the 1990s, local associations, volunteer groups, and religious organizations have offered legal, psychological, and educational support. During the 2011 Great Earthquake and Tsunami, Peruvians demonstrated solidarity by donating supplies, organizing aid campaigns, and helping with reconstruction efforts. Through cultural events, fairs, and sports tournaments, these networks maintain a strong sense of belonging. Radio stations, YouTube programs, and Spanish-language online newspapers serve as both informational and emotional bridges connecting compatriots across Japan. Looking toward the future. Today, the Peruvian community in Japan faces a new challenge, thinking about the next generations. The children of the Dekasegi grow up between two worlds, with an identity that can't be defined by a single flag. Some return to Peru, others choose to stay in Japan, but all share the heritage of a dual culture. In them lives a history spanning 140 years, from the first Japanese immigrants who arrived in Callao to the Peruvians now building their lives in Nagoya or Yokohama. The future will depend on their ability to keep their roots alive while embracing a globalized world where Peruvian and Japanese cultures coexist naturally.